Havoc.
News, interviews, and more.
We just reek of Huntsville Havoc hockey.
Welcome to the Reekin Havoc podcast. I'm Tim Lambert. We're going back to the end of one era and the beginning of another this week to feature former defenseman Steve Howard, who takes us through his journey, including the transition from Channel Cats to Havoc. We've also got a few reminders to let you in on as well as the Reekin Havoc podcast continues.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
One of the worst feelings you can have is that of being stranded. Well, BT's towing, tire, and truck repair makes that a thing of the past, with 24/7 towing services and roadside assistance in the northern Alabama and southern Tennessee areas. But that's not all. They also offer truck and trailer repair, mobile welding, brake service and repair, new and used tires, and other major and minor repairs. Their name says it all, BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. For 24/7 response, call 497-8234. That's 497-8234. BT's Towing, Tire, and Truck Repair. Got something to say? Put it on a t-shirt, or hoodie, or apron, or even an iPhone case. Just go to daddyoscustomtees.com and make it happen. Look through their selection of ready-made designs, or make one of your own. Check out their special hockey designs, too. With Daddy O's Custom Tees, you can truly have it your way. Look for Daddy O's Custom Tees on Facebook, follow them on Twitter or Instagram, or go online to daddyoscustomtees.com. That's DADDYOS Custom TEES.com. Daddy O's Custom Tees. They've got your back or front.
Let's go in the slot.
This week we're featuring former defenseman Steve Howard, who was in Huntsville for the end of the Channel Cats and the beginning of the Havoc. Start with the basics here. What's the Steve Howard story? Where are you from? All that stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I'm from Burton, Michigan, just outside of Flint. Grew up there. Started playing hockey at an early age, and I ended up playing junior in the North American Hockey League, the OJHL, and actually came down that way. There was a league called the Southern Elite Hockey League or something like that started down there. That was like Pelham, Alabama is where I played, where obviously the Birmingham Bulls are playing out of right now, that rink. Mm-hmm. Anyways, played there. You could be 21 and play in that league. And then I went to college for a year, or actually a semester. Didn't really like it. And I decided to jump into pro hockey, which was probably a little bit of young and dumb Howie back then. But, jumped into pro hockey down the Central Hockey League. I was lucky enough to make the team. And, I got to play for 7 years. And I spent a year and a half, a great year and a half in Huntsville, and won a championship the last year the Channel Cats were around, and then it swapped over to what is now the Havoc. Yeah. So that's kind of the short and sweet of it.
That's okay. I'll go back and maybe pick and choose some details there. Now you mentioned, I was going to ask you about the year in college. So I guess college was just not your thing.
Yeah, well, what's funny is it wasn't school wasn't my thing in high school. Oh, okay. I didn't have great grades, so I couldn't play Division I sports back then. I was what they called a Prop 48. You had to clear the NCAA clearinghouse. So I would have had to sit out a year, Division I. And then Brockport came around. I had a couple of friends go there, and it seemed like a great opportunity. Like, it wasn't going to have to pay very much to go to school there. And then I got there that year. I was the only junior A player that they had brought in that year. The year previous, they had brought in 3 or 4, but that year I was the only one. And it was an okay experience. I was getting straight A's. I just at the time I thought this isn't the hockey I wanted to be playing at the time, because I was the only junior A player they brought in. They had a couple other guys just coming straight out of high school and this and that. For whatever reason, I, said, all right, I'm going to take off. I don't want to spend the money on a second semester. I'm going to go train and get ready to play in the Central Hockey League is where I ended up going. So Yeah, I probably wouldn't advise any of my players to do that. But it was, it was just, I tell people all the time, I feel like I was very fortunate and lucky to have made that team that year. I played in San Angelo with San Angelo Outlaws. I had my junior coach was Lou Francis-Getty, played a long time in the NHL. So Lou knew Eddie Johnstone, who also played in the NHL, and Eddie was the coach there, and put in a call for me. And yeah, it was back then you had to have 3 rookies on every team, and I was one of 5 trying out, and I was fortunate enough to make the team and play that season. And yeah, then I kind of ended up over in your neck of the woods, I guess. Ended up over in Macon, Georgia, and down in Miami, and came to Huntsville. So been to Columbus, played all over that area.
Yeah. Well, now you mentioned playing in Pelham. Were the Bulls playing there too at that time?
So the Birmingham Bulls were playing out of I can't remember what the big arena in Birmingham was, but they were playing out of that big arena. We were over in Pelham, and we were a junior team. And, Barry Soskin owned the team. He owns a bunch of teams now. I think he owns the Carolina Thunderbirds and a couple others. But anyhow, he had owned the team, and in that league, they allowed you to be 21 and play in it. And I was planning on going into school, found out that my grades needed to come up, so I needed to be a transfer student. So I was currently taking classes back home at a community college to get my grades up. And I ended up getting a call from a teammate that I played with in Canada who was down there, and it's like, hey, we got Lou Francis-Getty as our coach. All the players live in apartments, and you should come down here and play. And so the league was basically based out of Florida, and we were one of the few teams that weren't in Florida. So I went down there and had a great experience. Met a lot of great people down there, and I ended up actually living there during the summer, just because kind of got in with the guys at the arena and was able to, finagle some free ice and help them out. They gave us a job refereeing the men's league, and I was also doing some bartending and things like that down there. So I had a blast. It was a great time for me when I was 21 years old. But once again, I'd always wanted to go to college, wanted to play college. And now that I had my grades up and I was accepted, I was going to go in and have 4 years of college to play. And I got up there and I was doing great in school and everything. But I think, if I'm being honest, at the time I had met a girl down in Birmingham, and that probably had some factors in it. I wanted to get back down there, and I ended up dropping out after the first semester and going back down there and just saying, you know what, I'm going to give it a run. I'm going to go play professional hockey, which, like I said, I probably wouldn't advise any kid to do that these days. It was very tough, and in that market back then, and especially for a player like myself, just coming out of college with one semester under my belt, and a lot of these guys were coming out of major, junior, and this and that, and I was, like I said, I was very lucky. I was able to make that team, but it was a scary time for me. I was like, what if I don't make the team? I wasn't exactly ready for men's league, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
it was like, I've been playing organized hockey my whole life. I wasn't ready to hang the skates up quite yet. So it was a great time for me as far as playing those 7 years. Minor professional hockey. I got to go overseas for a couple, which was a great experience. And
And you mentioned Pelham being in the Southern Elite Hockey League, but when you go on your profile on EliteProspects.com and click on SEHL next to Pelham Prowlers, it takes you to SEHL 1999 to 2000. Then when you click on league information, you get directed to SEHL 2003 to 2004, and what is apparently the Southeast Hockey League with the Channel Cats. So, somebody wasn't paying attention, they might think you played some pro hockey before college.
Yeah, same initials, 2 different leagues. One was a junior league, one was the pro league. Well, what is now the SPHL was the SEHL, the Southeast Hockey League, and the WHA2 combined to make the SPHL. And I actually that year tried to win 2 championships because I was double rostered. We won in Huntsville. I didn't even get to hang out and celebrate with the guys. Well, we celebrated a bit in Knoxville because we stayed overnight there. Then when I got back, I literally went into my apartment, packed up all my stuff, and I drove straight to Jacksonville because the next day, or maybe it was that night or the next day, Miami was playing against Jacksonville. And, yeah, long story short, I was in Miami. They were going to fold the team. That's how I ended up in Huntsville. Then they figured out a way to just make Miami play the road games the rest of the year and go by win percentage. So they called me to come back. I said, well, I'm already here. Like, I don't want to go back on my word. I already told them I'd be here for the year. They literally cut a player for me. So I ended up playing there and then going back to Miami to try to win their playoffs with them. But unfortunately, Jacksonville beat us in game 3 of the best of 3.
Okay.
So,
all right. So you were
yeah.
Okay, because it listed Huntsville after Miami in your little timeline here. So I thought maybe you played in Miami and then came to Huntsville. So, but I guess it was kind of a back and forth deal.
It was, yeah. I did play in Miami first, and then when I got down there, they had announced that we were playing out of Miami Arena, which is the Florida Panthers' original arena. The Miami Heat used to play out of there. And it's a big arena. It seats 18,000.
Oh.
And, yeah, it was a great time. I mean, we lived right across the street in gated apartments. But long story short, our owner was, just spending all kinds of money to rent that building. And there was no other ice. We had to practice out of there and everything. And so he was losing a lot of money on that organization and that team being down there. So when we got a call from our player assistant saying, look, it's not going to work. We're going to fold the team. Start making phone calls. That's when I had talked to John Gibson, and the rest was history. I was in a car driving up to Huntsville.
So they weren't having the sellouts like they are now in Huntsville. They're in Miami. Kind of hard.
No. Yeah, they weren't. But, it was like I said, going up to Huntsville, hockey town, that was such a great experience. I enjoyed it so much that, that's why I came back the next year.
Well, now what was, the Havoc the Channel Cats go from the Channel Cats to the Havoc. So what, as far as for you personally, I mean, what kind of difference was there, making that transition?
I'm not sure I noticed much of the difference, but I had heard, obviously Mr. Jeffries coming in and doing things the way he's done them for years. It was very, very professional, and how everything was handled. I know as a player, I had roommates the year before, and then that next year I ended up having my own apartment, and things like that were just, those were things that were taken care of, by the owner, which it was nice. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not even sure who owned the Channel Cast the year before, but I just know Mr. Jeffries treated all of his players very, very well. And that's one of the biggest reasons, I think, or biggest differences, I think, is that you hear a lot of bad stories back then about playing in this spot or that spot. I think Huntsville's where it is today just because of how the players are treated there by the ownership and the fans and the town. So.
Yeah, and that's a common story I'm hearing from the players that we talk to. Before we get much into the Huntsville days, let's go back a little bit. Did you play other sports growing up?
Yes, I did. I was a baseball player, golfer. I tried my hand in a few other sports, but those two things I played in high school, lettered in sports and stuff like that. But I still try to golf. I wouldn't say I'm scratch or anything, but I go quite often.
What was it about hockey that drew you in?
Oh, it was so. I always liked hockey. It was actually funny enough. My dad and his 5 brothers, and they're in their neighborhood. They always played street hockey growing up. I don't think any of my uncles or my dad could afford to play hockey growing up. It's an expensive sport, but they would always play outside, street hockey, things like that. So the Miracle game was on, And they actually were playing hockey. Well, inside the house, they had brought in one of the broken sticks, and apparently, I guess they grabbed that broken stick, and they had the TV literally on a TV tray. They were watching the game, and I kept shooting the puck, or not a puck. It was like it probably could have been a crushed can or a piece of garbage. I don't remember what it was, but I was shooting it, and I kept, I scored, had my stick over my head and everything. So they thought it was funny. The next day they took me to a pond, and they got me these, double runner skates, and I kind of buzzed around at 2 years old, kind of on the ice with these things while they pushed me. And then, that was kind of what I did for the next couple of years. And then my babysitter was Tony Zabel's mom 2 years later.
Huh.
And Tony Zabel played a long time. They called him like the guru of roller hockey or something along those lines. He's from Flint, won a national championship at Northern Michigan, went on to play minor pro and for a while in the ECHL and this and that. And then he started, he was played in the RHI, and he did the pro beach roller hockey thing and all that stuff. So anyways, a lot of people know who he is from back then. So Tony Zabel was, quite a bit older than me. I think he was playing bantam or midget hockey at the time when I was 4 years old, but he had cut me down a hockey stick, and we would pass every time he'd get home from school out in the, outside, and he'd spend some time with me. Well, my mom ended up going with his mom. We went and watched him play one time, and my mom went into the office with his mom at the arena and got me signed up for a spring league at 4 years old, and that was it. I was playing Flint Icelanders.
So, as far as growing up, who were some of your sports heroes, or maybe who you wanted to model your game after?
Well, I think growing up in Michigan, and especially in the 90s when you get those great Red Wings teams, it was, obviously the best defenseman in my eyes back then was Nicholas Lidstrom, and the way he played, how he carried himself, what he did. That was probably my biggest inspiration. I think all of us wanted to be Nicholas Lidstrom. I even used the Nicholas Lidstrom curve, I think most of my career. So, he's probably the top dog there. But all those guys on that team, we just followed the Red Wings period. Stevie Wide. You had your Darren McCartys, and you had your Bob Proberts and different guys like that. But I mean, the way those teams were built it was fun to watch.
Well, you were a defenseman. Did you always play defense growing up?
No, that's a good question. I switched back at 17. I had gone to a bunch of AAA tryouts my 15 and 16-year-old year, and I got cut from all of them. I was a forward, and I tried to play center. I used to like taking face-offs, and so I got cut from a lot of them. And I think when I was 16, there was one of those tryouts. Down in Detroit, it's a big deal. Like, you either played for Little Caesars, CompuWare. Well, back then it was the Detroit Falcons, but that would be now like Bell Tire. There's only 3 teams really down there, and if you made one of those teams, like you were getting heavily scouted. So I remember I went to one of those. I couldn't remember which one at 16, and I was one of like 100 forwards trying out for like 2 spots at the camp. It was ridiculous. And then the defenseman, there was like my buddy was a defenseman. There was only like 20 defensemen trying out, and there was more spots open on D. And I was just like, man, I'm going to try out on D. I ended up like making it through to the point where the coach had talked to me. He was like, hey, man, like, I know you just started playing D, but you should really think about making the switch. I thought about taking you this year. And so that year I went back to my AA team in Flint, and I moved back and transitioned to defense. And the next year that year I graduated. That was in 1996. I was still 17, so I could play AAA for one more year. So the year after I graduated, I went down and I played for the Detroit Falcons as a defenseman that year, and I ended up signing a tender to play in the North American Hockey League, and that's how junior days started.
Well, how much of an adjustment is it to go from playing forward to defense? I mean, because to us fans, it just looks like, everybody's out there doing the same thing. They may be at a different place on the ice, but,
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Forwards, like, my hat's off to the forwards, especially the ones that can make plays and score a lot of goals. There's certain types of forwards that are out there, but they always say forwards are a dime a dozen, good D are hard to find. And so I went through some really, really tough learning years there through junior, just figuring out how to play the game and what being a smart defenseman was. If you're a forward that can score, you're there to score, But hockey IQ was something that nobody had ever really talked to me about until I started playing D. Then it became more about who I was playing against. Like, what line is out there when you're on the road? They get last change. They put their top line out against you, or, do they got a bunch of guys that are out there that are going to run around and bang, and, is there going to be some opportunity for maybe you to create some offense? And what's the scoreboard say? Are we up 2-1 or are we down 2-1? And so all those things, when I was a forward, I really didn't think about. I just wanted to score every time I touched the puck, and so playing D, taught me all that through junior, and I learned the hard way sometimes. I'd jump up into a rush and we were up 2-1, and all of a sudden the other team scores the tying goal, and man, it's tough to look the rest of your teammates in the eye when you get back to that locker room. You know what I mean? So that's what really taught me, okay, the hockey IQ piece is such a big part of playing hockey, but more importantly, being a good defenseman. You have to have hockey IQ to be a defenseman. Nothing against the forwards, but there's some that are they're there to score goals, and a lot of them just they'll cheat the offense, or they know they're just going on the power play when the PK has to go out. That's not them.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play in all situations. I never wanted to come off the ice, so that was kind of something I took pride in. Was okay, which hat am I putting on right now? Is it the defensive hat or is it the offensive hat? I tried to be a little bit of everything.
Well, and as we're talking position here on the team, was there any particular role that you found yourself in, as the years went by? Were you maybe the motivator or the fighter or the instigator, troublemaker? I don't know.
Yeah, no, in junior hockey, I tried my luck a couple of times, did pretty good, and then I think my second year I had picked the fight with the wrong guy. That didn't help matters, but then I didn't really have to do it too much, just because of the hockey IQ piece. When you find yourself playing in a lot of scenarios, obviously, I mean, in Huntsville, I don't even know I don't think I even had a fight when I was in Huntsville. We had so many tough players there, and once again, I owe a lot to those guys, especially back in that era. The Mike DeGurses and the Luke Phillips and Jason DeGarys and all these guys. Like, if anybody touched me, it was, there was somebody answering the bell real quick. Yeah. And I thought it was really, that's what kind of allowed me to be able to play those years, I think, is some of those guys that were protecting me. And more importantly, I was able to play in all situations, and Gibby stuck me out there for, the power play, the penalty kill, and 5-on-5. I was a guy that, he relied on quite a bit, and I thanked him for it, because I still do. I still talk to the guy. It's doing that helped me out in my career, and, kind of springboarded me into, playing the next few years.
Well, and we've talked to all those guys on the podcast that you mentioned, and one of the things, I mean, you ended up with you had the Channel Cats there at the end, and one of the things that I would hear about them was that they had, and maybe not necessarily while you were there, but maybe in the early days, they had that reputation of being a really tough team, and the other teams might come down with what they call the Huntsville flu whenever, the Channel Cats would come into town.
Yeah. No, it was that way when I was there too. I mean, I don't know if the guy, I'm sure that you guys might have even heard the story. My first game in Huntsville, so there was only 7 or 8 games left in the regular season when I left Miami, and they had to submit their playoff rosters. So I had driven straight up from Miami to Huntsville, and before my first game, we were playing against the Knoxville Ice Bears. And I will never forget this. I sat in between Jason Nagiri and Luke Phillips, who were roommates at the time. Really good friends of mine. Still talk to both of them today. Gibby would come in and he would announce the other team's starting lineup, and everybody would boo, and then he would announce our starting lineup, and we'd cheer. And he announced that, I think his name was Nemec. They called him the Nemesis, was starting for Knoxville. And then he announced our starting lineup. Well, it just so happened to have Jason Gary and Luke Phillips in the lineup. And they, right after, Doogie stands up and tells Philly, I'm fighting him first. And Philly says, no, I called it. I'm fighting him first. I already told you. It got to a point where they started fighting each other in the locker room. And I'm sitting there going, what is going on? I remember looking across, and Mike DeGer sat straight across from me, and this is going on. And I could see his face, pop in the middle of the two, every now and again when they were, pushing each other and going back and forth. And he's just laughing. And I'm I look at him, I'm like, what? Are these guys going to fight before they actually go out there to fight? And so, yeah, that was when I knew I was in Huntsville, and I knew that I had a lot of guys in there that were tough, and it was a crazy time, but I think the very next weekend we went into Fayetteville, and I think it was 52 seconds because they had to let the puck drop. You were not allowed to fight without the puck being actually in play. They had 7 fights in a row. So first fight happened. Well, as soon as the puck dropped, they blow the whistle. That fight would happen. The next guy'd step up, fight. Next guy'd step up, fight. Next guy step up, fight. And it was crazy time back then. But long story short, you were right. Huntsville is known for its toughness, and they were really tough. Even the next year, we brought Mike DeGer's cousin, Jason the Chief Simon, played in the NHL. And, we had some mega heavy hitters that next year. And Corey Dean was my, I think he was my roommate. He was 6'7". There was a lot of guys that liked to do it back then. And then obviously, Luke Phillips and Mike DeGers being there. Those two were the heavy hitters. Yeah.
And while we're on the subject of fighting, I think fans are kind of, especially probably the new fans, maybe it's kind of hard for them to wrap their heads around. A guy might be on one team fighting a guy on the other team, and then they end up being on the same team, and then becoming best buds, or vice versa. Maybe they go from being best buds and then they're fighting each other on the ice.
Yeah, no, that happens all the time. That's the thing is you play during the game, and it's funny how you'll see brothers fighting each other. I mean, I'm sure you guys watched a little bit of the St. Louis Winnipeg series. The Shen brothers were going at it a couple of times, but it happens quite often. I've seen best friends fight in a hockey game because it was needed. Yeah. It's just that's part of the game, and yeah, it happens all the time. And it's funny how they can just let things be afterwards, and that's usually what kind of brings the two together. If they get traded to the same team, they'll talk a bit about that fight. That's the icebreaker, and next thing you know, they're going for lunch and they're best buds because they both have that same mentality.
Any memories that come back, once you turned into a Havoc player?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that was a fun year too. getting to know the town and all those guys. 'Cause I had only spent, a month and a half in Huntsville the year before. And so come back that second year and have a little bit of a taste of what it was like, but more importantly, be there all year. And when I say all year, it was a fun time, but the SPHL was kind of still that single A, I guess, status. And, John Gibson was great. Gibby ended up letting me go and play a couple of times in the ECHL that year, call them call-ups or whatever. But, I went and played for Trenton one weekend and ended up coming back, and everything went well. And about a month later, we were down playing the Jacksonville Barracudas, and Gibby comes into the room after the game, and he says, "Hey, Trenton called again." And it was the Trenton Titans back then. They were out of New Jersey. And he said, "Trenton called again. They want you to play or meet them again." They just had some of their players get called up. I think it was Lehigh Valley back then, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms in the American League. So they need a D. And I'm like, okay, well, we had driven down to Jacksonville. I want to say it might even just been like a one game in and out type thing. Maybe it was two, but long story short, I didn't have any clothes. I had we always dressed in warm-ups when we went on the road, and then I had like one set of street clothes. We didn't wear suits or anything to the road games then. And so I had talked to the coaches, and they're like, "We need you. We'll bring you a suit." So they literally packed me a suit from somebody else. I don't even know who it was. I jumped on a plane in Jacksonville, flew up there with literally my one duffel bag with, one other pair of underwear. And I had to go to, they had to take me to Kmart or Walmart or whatever it was back then, so I could get some underwear and stuff to wear for the next couple of days. Well, we ended up playing. It was a Wednesday game, Thursday off, Friday, Saturday in Peoria. So I met them in Peoria, and then they got word their defensemen were staying in Lehigh Valley. So they're like, "Hey, you're staying with us, and you're going to go with us on this." They were doing a road swing. They had played those 3 games there, and then we were playing like a Tuesday or Wednesday game in Dayton. So we drove to Dayton, stayed there for a couple of days, played that game, and then we ended up going all the way back to Trenton. So I get back to Trenton, I don't even know what's going on. All of a sudden, I just been in Peoria, been in Dayton, and now I'm in Trenton. Once again, keep in mind, I only got I have one pair of street clothes in my bag. I'm buying stuff from getting loans from random guys on the team just to wear clothes. So I ended up going, and they put me in the apartment. So I went in the apartment of the defenseman that was playing for Lehigh Valley, and obviously I'm wearing his suits to the games and things like that. Keep this in mind, in Huntsville, this was getting close to the end of the season. I had a living girlfriend at the time. She had moved down there with me. That's why I had my own apartment. And here I am. I've been in Trenton for 2 weeks now. And I'm playing all these, we're playing home games now. I think we played the Wheeling Nailers, and I can't remember the other teams we were playing at the time, but we were playing. I was still there. 2.5 weeks had gone by, and I kept checking in with Gibby. Gibby's like, "What is going on? Where are they?" I said, "I don't know. Have you talked to them?" I was a little bit, I was the new guy. I wasn't going to the coach's office and saying, "Hey, what's going on here? How long am I here?" I just kept showing up to practice. I come to the games. I knew I was one of 5 or 6 D they had, so I was dressing. And, I just kept playing. And then Gibby had finally said, "How you got to go find out what's going on, man. We need to know. Our playoffs are coming up. I got to set the playoff roster." And he might already set the playoff roster and put me on it. And so I went in, and at the time, Coach Havlin was in there, and Ted Dent's the guy that called me up. I still talk to Ted all the time. Ted was in the DEL last year as a coach, and then Javi, I can't remember where Javi's coaching somewhere too, but I go in to talk to those two, and I was a little scared, intimidating. I go in to talk to them, and they're like, we weren't planning on sending you back. And I go, what do you mean? They're like, well, our playoffs are coming up. We're in a playoff push here, and we need you. And so we're planning on you just sticking around. And I go, so I broke the news to him that I have a living girlfriend down there. You know, I'm an assistant captain for the Havoc. I need to go back. And they're like, hey, after our playoffs are over, I'll come back, but I need to go down there right now. And they're like, oh, man, you know, I could see them thinking, well, give us some time to think about it, this and that. We got to figure something out. So they called Gibby, this, that, the other. Anyways, I get a flight out the next day. They fly me back to Huntsville. And we ended up playing that weekend. And it was funny because we had to get a certain spot or get in the playoffs, we had to win both games. And we ended up winning both games. Well, we ended up playing Jacksonville again. This is the third time I played Jacksonville. Anyways, in this story, but played Jacksonville. We ended up losing the series, and it was like, you know, it was a best of 3 series. I think we ended up losing it. I ended up calling Trenton up, and I had followed him. They had called up a college kid straight out of Northeastern. His name was Judy, is all I remember. Anyways, I called him that weekend after we lost, and the Judy kid had actually scored in it, and in the game that he played. And they're like, well, we're going to see how the kid does here, you know, first, but keep your phone on. Yeah, we might call you back. And, yeah, at the end of the story, they ended up going on a major run throughout the regular season. They made playoffs. They had probably about 3 or 4 more weekends left. So they probably had about, 6 to 10 games left. They ended up winning those, getting into playoffs, and then they won a Kelly Cup championship that year. And the guys would call me on the bus, because I got to know a lot of them quite well, especially my roommates, you know, and they beat the Alaska Aces, I think, in the final. And, yeah, but on a couple of those road trips, they'd call me on the bus, Howie, what are you doing? And I was like, man, I'm a month and a half. Like, their playoffs go 7-game series, right? The Kelly Cup. So you can go for a long time. I mean, the Kelly Cup is still being played right now. You know what I mean? So think about when Huntsville's season ended.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so right now the Kelly Cup's being played, and, you know, think about how long that is. And I'm talking to these guys, you know, at this point, fat, out of shape, hanging out with my buddies back home. You know, I know everybody probably thinks we go home and we work out, but back then it was like, hey, season just ended, I'm going to enjoy myself. Well, I stayed on the ice for the first 2 weeks, and then after that I realized I'm not getting the call. So, yeah, that was a tough time, especially when, you know, Coach Hamlin had told me when he was like, really, you want to leave? Our owner is going to match the player bonus, which is something some owners do up there, is, you know, you get a bonus for each round of the playoffs that you go. That's through the Professional Hockey Players Association, the PHPA. And so they have a bonus set up for the players throughout playoffs. And then the owner of the Trenton Titans back then said, I'll match the bonus. And so he told me that, and I was just like, I can't do anything about it, man. I got to get back to Huntsville. And it was just one of those, like, shoulda, coulda, woulda, but at the same time I was proud that, you know, and happy that I went back, just because, you know, I just thought it's something that loyalty, especially in today's world with the transfer portals and things like that, is few and far between. I think there's got to be some loyalty, especially for an organization and a coach that gave me a shot when, you know, I didn't have anything when I heard Miami was going to fold. But, you know, at the same time, it would have been nice to have that big chunk of change and have a Kelly Cup ring.
Yeah. I was going to ask you what if you had to do it over again, what you would have done, but you kind of answered my question there, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's, once again, I think that's something that we bring up all the time. There's been a lot of our players here in North American Hockey League that have turned down opportunities at higher levels to stay here just because they like it so much or whatever. And, you know, I really appreciate that loyalty these days. And like I said, you don't see it too often. You know, and when you do, you usually got, you know, well, it speaks volumes to that player, I guess, and what he's made of.
Yeah, and the only call back you got was from the players kind of rubbing it in.
Yeah, well, that, and obviously I told you I still they were really rubbing it in. They were like, let's go out and check in on it. What are you doing out? They were, we just won our series. I said, I know. Back then, they didn't broadcast it on TV, so I listened to it on the radio. That's how old I am.
Yeah,
And, so I listened to the broadcast of them playing on the road. So, yeah, it was pretty crazy to think back on all that stuff. But I still, every time I see Ted Dent, this kid played hockey, and he had tried out here a couple of years. And that's when I kind of got reunited with Ted. We talk about that run, and because he was the one that called me up. It was like his first year coaching. He was a video coach for the Washington Capitals before that, fresh out of college, and now he was the assistant coach for Haviland in Trenton. So yeah, it was a wild experience, but I mean, back then it was all wild. I feel like the games were wild, crowds were wild. It was just crazy time. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
We'll be back with more of the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Time now for the Huntsville Havoc Pick of the Pack, a weekly spotlight.
Head coach Stuart Steffen.
Our equipment manager there, Kyle Harden, just won Equipment Manager of the Year. He's a younger guy, kind of grew up in Memphis there, was a stick boy for the River Kings for a long time, and then I think went on to the North American League and was an equipment manager there, and then did a year in Evansville, and then, he's been here the last 2 years, and I think even from last year to this year, he's grown a lot, taken a big step as an equipment manager in that role, and his biggest asset, I think, for him is just like an incredibly nice guy, willing to do anything for the players. Like, we had our exit interviews the last couple of days here, and every single guy said, absolutely love Kyle. He's such a nice guy. He tries to help him out as much as possible and always willing to help the other players. And I think a big part of winning Equipment Manager of the Year is also being very accommodating to the other teams, being nice and treating them well when they come here. And then when we go places too, is just really trying to help out teams. So obviously having Kyle here for his second year, I think he's done a fantastic job and, always has a good attitude around the rink too. So definitely an easy guy to work with, and we're glad to have him and look forward to having him back next year as well. Cody Miller, he's our athletic trainer, just got named Athletic Trainer of the Year. Kind of back-to-back for him. Last year he was the co-athletic trainer of the year with Kyle there from Fayetteville, but this year, he won it solo. He was in Birmingham for, quite a few years, and then came over when, our trainer.
My name is Joel, and I came to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in December of 1987 to be treated for osteosarcoma, which is bone cancer. We didn't know anything about St. Jude. We didn't know what they meant, or that, when we got here, what we would do, how it would be taken care of. And when we arrived, we found out that my family wasn't going to have to pay for any of my treatment, not for my medicine, not for travel, not for housing, not for food. St. Jude was going to cover all that. St. Jude supported me in every way, from, taking that financial burden off my parents to making sure that all of my family was included in this time. St. Jude literally means everything to me. I get to go home to my family tonight. I get to cook dinner for them. That's what you're giving. You are giving us everything by supporting St. Jude. So thank you so much.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
Hey, this is Travis Koffelt, and you're listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
Well, now, you stayed in the ECHL for the next season, but you went to Bakersfield.
Yeah, well, technically I went overseas first.
Okay, I was wondering which one came first.
So, I'm half Korean. And, that was the only reason I left Huntsville. Otherwise, I probably would have went back there. But I got offered more money than I'd ever made in hockey to go play in Korea. And my mom's Korean. Literally, my father was in the Army. He met my mother over in Korea while he was stationed there. So this was an opportunity for me to go over, and I went over. Most people probably think I got to go over and be a non-import or play as a Korean citizen, but I didn't. I was an import over there, and to get that offer was hard to do. I played against Derek Plant, played in the NHL that year. He was over there. Sean Podine was over there, played in the NHL. There was a lot of NHLers and American League guys over there. So going to play in that league, there was big money. And so I got the chance to go over and play, and that was the only reason I didn't come back to Huntsville. I went over there to play. And their season, though, we were a new team, And the big thing back then, this is, I think, 2005, somewhere around there, they were trying to get the 2014 Olympics, and they wanted to get the Winter Olympics in 2014. The biggest thing that the Olympic Committee said is, you guys don't have hockey. You have one professional team, and that was in Seoul. So they said you have to start up another hockey team. So Kangwonland is a casino over there. They were grossing like $2 million a day or something like that. And so they said, you guys need to start a hockey team. And so Kangwonland was started. Their coach had ties with people that I knew over here, found out about me. I ended up going over there and playing that season. Well, we weren't very good. It was our first year. Obviously, you were playing against NHLers and this and that. Our season ended after regular season, which was in mid-January, early January. It was the end of regular season. They started earlier over there. So, long story short, it was January, and I was done playing. Well, I got a call from the Bakersfield Condors that, they wanted me and my teammate, Josh Liebenau. Actually, they wanted three of us to come play in Bakersfield. Dan went back to his team in Amarillo. He played for the Gorillas the year before, so he went back to Amarillo. That's the end of net. And Josh Liebenau and I jumped out of plane, flew whatever, the 13-hour flight or something like that, something crazy, all the way back to Detroit or Minneapolis, wherever we were going to. We literally got on another plane to Bakersfield. And keep in mind, the time change over there is like 11 or 12, 13-hour difference. So, like, it's morning now or it's night over there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were all ass backwards when it came to time, like being acclimated to the time change and whatever. So we literally got to Bakersfield, jumped on a bus, rode up to Stockton to play that night. And they're like, the coach had told us they were banged up and they needed bodies. And we didn't know it was like that bad. So we're like, they were going to play us. And I will never forget this saving grace, because I was telling them, like, hey, man, it's 7 at night here, but it's 7 in the morning over there, and I haven't slept. Like, I should just be getting up, and I haven't slept. I've been up for, like, 30 hours, I need to. So they're like, get on a bike, start riding the bike, get your blood going, and I'm riding the bike. And they had a guy that was kind of borderline. He was day-to-day, so they had him get checked out by the trainer or the doc right before the game. I think he even took warm-ups, and the assistant coach came in and told me, hey, he just got cleared. You don't have to play tonight. And I'll never forget being like, oh, this is great. Thank God. And so, yeah, that was I ended up playing in Bakersfield the rest of that time and had a blast there. We had a heck of a team, man. Even putting it together like we did, it was, we had a lot of guys that were injured, called up, this and that. And Marty Raymond was the coach then. And he brought myself and Leaves in and a couple other guys at that time, and we went on a run. And it was a fun experience for me too. And yeah, that was Bakersfield.
Well, now you said they were in bad shape, kind of baked up. You might have still been in better shape, just showing up and playing like you did than some of their other guys.
I might have, but it was that league back then it still is really, really good. And, for me to just jump off a plane after playing Asian hockey right into the ECHL, there was a big uptick. Like, there were some good hockey players in Asia, don't get me wrong. Like I said, there was ex-NHLers over there and stuff, but the style was very different. And the style overseas is just different. It's not as physical, a lot of skill, things like that. And then to go right into the ECHL, which in the early 2000s, it's not much different than what the SP was. It's tough, and you got a lot of guys that were drafted in the NHL and the ECHL, and they're in early contracts and still trying to make waves, and so it would have been a little bit of a crazy thing for me to play that game, but once I got acclimated to the time change and things like that, I was fine. But it actually got to play. I think we went to, might have been the conference finals that year or something along those lines. I can't remember. We were there and it was hot out. I remember getting to like early June and we were driving to the rink for a playoff game. So I still to this day, I tell the guys like all the time, there's nothing like going to an ice rink and practicing and you're going there in shorts and flip flops, especially up in Minnesota, because that just means you've rolled into that spring territory, and there's a lot of guys that are done playing hockey at that point.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Well, now Korea and hockey, probably. I mean, that in the minds of maybe most fans, I don't know, may go together as well as hockey and Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, no, this was the Asia Hockey League, so it's still going. So back then, there were 4 teams in Japan. I want to say 2 or 3 in China, and we had 2 in Korea. So there was a team out of Seoul, it's still there. Hangwildland's still there too. It's just called, I think it's a different name. It's changed now, different sponsorship, because that's what it is. Like in Europe and in soccer, it's kind of like that, where you're a sponsored team by a certain company, and so you had those 3 countries, and we would be doing our road games in Japan. We'd jump on a flight. To go to China, and it's a wild experience to be over in Asia and going to all these places. And myself being the 20-something I was, young and dumb again, wasn't very smart in my 20s, but I'm literally looking at the Great Wall of China. I never once took a day and went over and saw it or anything like that. I just seen it from the bus, and I was like, yeah, we should go over there and walk that or experience it. Never did it.
Yeah.
I just, now I look back at my young self and I wish I could just strangle him and go, hey man, smarten up. Like go do some other things. Anyways, saw a lot in Korea, which was kind of cool because, you had a lot of downtime there. But when we were on the road, you get a day off, and we were just, we were more about the, just hanging out with the guys and the hockey piece, and I should have been more about, the life experience.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. But,
go see some history.
Yeah, no kidding. I think I automatically figured I'd be back there a bunch and I'd see it at some point. And haven't been back since.
So what are the fans like over there?
It was different. Especially our fans, it was a lot of the workers that were being brought in. But some places there were army bases and things like that. There were military bases over there. So you'd get the fans that would cheer at the right moments and this and that. And but there were definitely fans that were cheering when they didn't need to cheer. Maybe it was even clapping for the other team scoring type thing. it was different, but I shouldn't say they were all like that. There was definitely some hardcore fans in some areas that once again had military bases. And I actually, on the road when we played the other team in Korea in Seoul, I befriended a guy that was from Michigan because I had scored. I remember him leaning over and saying something about being a Michigan boy, and I thought they were chirping me, and I kind of looked back, and it was an American guy, and he waved, and long story short, I talked to him after, him and his wife. He was married to a Korean lady. He was stationed over there. Obviously, my dad's married to a Korean lady. They invited us over for dinner, and the next thing you know, I started to hang out with those guys. They'd get us on the military base where we could get Taco Bell and Burger King and things that they didn't have over there. So all the imports that were from the United States were thoroughly excited to get on the Army base. But you have to get signed in by him, and we loved it. We got to know him over that year and hung out with him and his wife quite often because we actually lived in Seoul. The team lived in Seoul, but we played our home games 2 hours away in a town called Chincheon. So another wild thing. It'd be like you guys practicing in Atlanta and then playing all your home games in Huntsville.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Wild.
Some home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then after that, so you come back to the States and you play for Columbus, and you get a little bit of taste of the coaching role too. Yeah.
It was well, how that worked. After that season, I was talking to Brian Curran, who was the former coach of the Columbus Cottonmouths. He was then in Quad Cities with the Mallards, and I had played for Brian when I was in Macon. And so I was going to play in Quad Cities with him. I actually stopped through and hung out with him, went out to dinner on our way back. And actually, I think while he was in Quad City, like I think they had so many, they had hotel rooms and hotel deals. He's like, hey, if you're stopping through, because I was telling him I was going to be coming through after driving and this and that. So why don't you just spend the night here? Get your room at our host hotel. So I ended up staying the night and going out to dinner with him and stuff. And we had talked about possibly playing there. Keep in mind, our season just ended. It was this time of year. It was, early June back then. And Colonel was going to sign me to a contract. Well, it was still pretty early, and he was still signing guys. Long story short, he ends up signing a bunch of D, and he ends up telling me that his former assistant, Jerome Bichard, is looking for a player assistant coach. He's like, why don't you do that? And I was like, I'll talk to him. Well, that was how I got hooked up with Bish, and I ended up down in Columbus and ended up being a player assistant coach that year and played down there. And yeah, that was another fun experience.
Had you ever
a little different?
Had you ever thought about wanting to become a coach before that?
Little, not enough to really understand or think about how I needed to do that. It was. I knew I wasn't going to just be a head coach in professional hockey and jump, or take my skates off and jump on the bench. Right. I wasn't at that point in my career, and mentally and just with what I knew. But I thought it was. B showed me a lot of the behind the scenes things, especially when it came to recruiting. I think that next year they ended up winning it. I did a lot of the recruiting as far as making those first initial phone calls. And I remember, because I came out of D3, I think some of their leading scorers were out of D3, NCAA Division III, and a lot of them that next year I made phone calls initially to their coach, found out who those seniors were, called those kids, and then, that was Bish had me doing a lot of that stuff. And so, yeah, I quickly learned about the recruiting piece to get guys there and doing the research, finding, back then you had to get, I don't think anything was uploaded on computers. You had to literally get VHS tapes or DVDs sent to you from the games. And so we watched them. That was kind of that part of it. But Beast was great. He's a player's coach, still is. You want to run through a wall for the guy. You want to play for the guy. And so I learned a lot of that piece from Bish, and he had me doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, but probably he took on a lot too. Like, he knew I was still a player, so it wasn't like I had to be up at the office from 9 to 5. I was coming in for practice, and I'd come in for an hour or two and help him out after practice, go do my thing. So when I officially got into coaching, it was light years later. I can't remember, 10 years later. It didn't start until my 12, 13 years, something along those lines. So yeah. I guess it wasn't that long. It's probably 6 or 7 years later, but it was handed to me. I had no idea what I was doing, and I basically just did things like we did in pro hockey back then, but not really understanding that I'm dealing with 16 to 20-year-olds who probably don't really know a lot of the things that the professional guys know. And so I was able to kind of go through and just be a really good recruiter and just have the best players playing for me those first couple of years. But then when I got to Waterloo and the USHL, that's when I learned how to coach.
Yeah.
That was what do you want to call it? A master's degree in coaching, going through the Waterloo Blackhawks days with PK O'Hanley, who was, he's arguably one of the top junior coaches ever to coach. He did things a certain way, and he was very detailed, and I was not detailed until I got there. And yeah, so anyway, so that was kind of how I ended up getting here. I did that for 3 years, and I was ready to try my luck at being a head coach again. Now that I knew or had learned what I had learned in Waterloo, I was ready to take that on to Austin, and yeah, I'm entering my 9th season here. So,
well, how did you make it to the Netherlands?
Oh, yeah, skip the Netherlands. That's a funny story, too. So you remember how I had a living girlfriend down in Huntsville? Well, she had gone with me to Korea. She was actually Canadian. I was from Michigan. She's Canadian. She was a nurse, and so she was working. She had gone with me for a couple of years, kind of half thinking like most of us pro guys, we last a few years and we're done. You know, especially once you get to that veteran status. I don't even know if they still have it. I'm sure they do. But veterans, you can only have so many veterans on a team. And, you know, to be a veteran and playing pro hockey back then, you know, you can only have so many of them. And I don't remember what it was, but certain places only were allowed 3. Some were allowed 5. But you can only have so many veterans. So if you were a veteran playing hockey, like you had to be a player. And so I had originally kind of assumed and told her, like, you know, yeah, until I get to my veteran status, I'm going to play, and then, you know, we'll probably be retiring. Well, I ended up obviously getting to play a couple more years or a few more years after that. I think you play every game for 3 years, I think you end up crossing over into that veteran status. And so, yeah, I once I signed that contract to be a player assistant, she kind of was like, okay, let's see if this goes into coaching or something along those lines. But she was a nurse, and she obviously made way more money than what we were making, you know, back then. And so we had a house up in Canada, and that's where I stayed for the summer before I went down to Columbus. Anyways, she was up there all year and just flew down to visit me a couple times. Well, then after the season was over, it was basically the ultimatum time. You need to, we're doing this or we're not doing this. And we were engaged at the time. So I retired. I was like, I'm done playing. So I moved up there and like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm in Canada. So I tried to like go and do some hockey clinics and this and that. I got paid a little bit during the summer, but nothing major. Met a guy, my dad's a roofer, so he still is. He has a roofing company. And so I met a guy that was a roofer in Canada. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go, how about I go roof with this guy? So I went and roofed with him. Well, my first paycheck was tiddlywinks. My dad paid triple what this guy was paying me. And basically I was taking advantage of a guy that didn't have his passport to work or visa to work in Canada. And so I did it for like 2 days, and I was like, dude, I'm out on this, man. So I was driving back and forth to work with my dad. So I'd work 3 days with him, and then I'd drive back up to what was then? It was Saga Beach is where we were living, up by the Barrie area. And so I'd drive back there and hang out for a few days, go back to my dad's, back up there, or parents back up there to Wasaga. Doing all that, I got a call from a former teammate. He was over in the Netherlands, and he was playing over there for the Amstel Tigers. And I had followed him. He and I played together my first year, and we had always worked like hockey camps during the summers together. So he called me, and he's like, Howie, we just had our best defenseman retire. He's going to be an assistant coach now with the team. So we have some extra money to spend on bringing over another import. And I'm like, oh, well, that's great. You know, like, sounds awesome. What are we talking here? So he gave me the money and what we get, apartments, car, this, that, the other. I'm like, okay, well, you know, when my fiance would get home, I was going to have a chat with her. So I told him that. I said, yeah, it's not going to work. What do you mean it's not going to work? He's like, no, you need to make a decision now. They have like a list of names. I've told them, give me 1 second to call you. They need to know if you're coming, they're going to get rid of these names, but somebody's going to take this opportunity, and I want it to be you. So once again, young and dumb, probably the theme of this podcast with me, young and dumb. I go, oh, okay. Well, she's going to understand. Back then it was send me an email or a fax. They faxed me over a contract, signed it right there. She got home, walked through the door. I said, hey, guess what? I just signed a contract. I'm going over to Amsterdam.
Oh, no.
And the look on her face was something I'll never forget, and it was not the look I expected of joy. It was the complete opposite of that. Anyways, we were supposed to get married probably in a few weeks at that point, and we ended up canceling the wedding, 2 weeks before, and I ended up going over and playing that year. But it was a lifelong goal of mine to play in Europe. But probably, note to self, I'm married now, and my wife's great, and I'm still not great at always checking in and finding out, like, is this cool? Is this okay? But they're minor things. It's not like moving away for a job for a year. It's more of like, I already set up a tea time with these two guys on Saturday, which I'm getting better at, but always check in with your wife. Always check in with your wife. Make sure she's okay with it. Yeah. And she still gives me crap about things like that. Like, do you not think to ask me? So anyways, different, this was a couple girlfriends ago, but my wife now is great. She deals with a lot, but I did learn a big lesson that you definitely should talk to your significant other before making a big lifelong decision like that, or life-changing decision like that.
So maybe you're still young, but not quite so dumb.
Yeah, that's the thing. I laugh about it all the time, because I know I got a bunch of players that were, younger versions of myself. And, so my dad always talked about it when I was younger. He's like, common sense, man. You got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And I'm like, I get what he meant, especially when I think about stories like that in my 20s and even my teens. I'm like, geez, like, how'd you deal with a kid like that, or deal with a 20-something like that? But now, it's where you got to grow up and you got to learn from your mistakes. And I made a lot of them, and most of them were getting your hand burnt on the stove, that analogy, versus seeing somebody else do it. It was literally me just walking right out in front of everybody and doing something dumb. So,
well, now we talked about the hockey and the fans in Korea. Compare that with how it went in the Netherlands.
So the Netherlands was a little different. Obviously, some were better than others as far as getting fans. There were some places where you played it. I mean, I think everybody had fans. It's just the atmosphere was different. Like, I remember playing in a couple arenas, and it was like it was almost like a practice arena. It'd be like your guys' practice, when you guys play your games over there. Mm-hmm. That's the way it was. Like, you had fans everywhere. They were standing along the glass. They were all over the place. But then you play in a big arena like the Van Braun Center, and they had fans everywhere. That would be like going to Tilburg. Tilburg's still over there playing in the DL2 or DL3 maybe. Anyways, they're the Oberliga over there. So they're playing, and they had a hooligan section. Like, you had to stay away from that group. Like, they were rowdy, and then the visiting team section was caged in with fence, and on top there was a net over top, so they couldn't throw stuff on you.
Oh, wow.
And so I remember my brother came over to visit me for Christmas, and he went to watch the game because the only games we had that weekend were in Tilburg. So he came over with us to the game, and he was like, they were throwing beer over onto us, like they were. So you were getting wet and drenched in beer when they would score goals and stuff like that. It was crazy. But then you would come to Amsterdam. Hockey wasn't that big in Amsterdam. We had a nice arena, but we didn't get a ton of fans. We maybe averaged around 1,000 fans, but the arena probably held 3,000. And so then you would go and play in Herenveen and these places that were like kind of off the beaten path, maybe up in the northern parts and this and that. The hockey team was it. And so you get good fans up there, and they had nice arenas. And then you'd have some that were just practice arenas. And it was kind of weird how it all worked, but it was a great experience. We'd only practice 2 days a week, so you'd only practice on like Mondays and Wednesdays, and then you played Friday and Saturday. So it was very different in that. You'd have 2 days off. Like, literally, what do we do for these 2 days? Meanwhile, back in the States, you practiced every day. So it was a change in how the thought process worked and how things were done over there. But Yeah, it was nice. We were very close to everything. We had our own car, apartments, and stuff, so we got to drive around and see a lot of Europe.
Yeah. Well, it looks like you, for a few years, you kind of split your time between Flint and Waterloo.
Yeah, so a little bit. I was scouting for Waterloo.
Yeah.
And I was coaching. And so when I got done playing, my last year in Amsterdam, the only reason I quit playing was because I had worked a hockey camp every year. I always worked the same hockey camp, which was down in southern Minnesota. And one of my former teammates, one that went with me to Asia, had a job offer to go work at this hockey training facility. It was called the Minnesota Advancement Program. And so he told me this guy wants to hire him, but he had a good job. He's like, I'm not doing it. But this guy is paying guys, minor league hockey players, a salary, like a good salary, 401k, insurance, everything, to get dressed in all your gear and actually go out and practice and do drills with top-end high school hockey players in Minnesota for 3 hours a day. And then for the other 3 hours a day, you're working out groups of top-end high school Minnesota hockey players. And I'm like, I do that. I was just turned 30 years old. So I'm like, what am I going to be doing here in the future? Like at some point, I'm not going to be able to play pro hockey anymore. And so he's like, you want to meet with him? So he gives me the guy's phone number. I call him, go up there, interview, get the job. And so I was planning on going back to Europe the next year. And here I was. I was officially retired again from hockey. And I moved up to the Twin Cities. And I had heard a lot about Minnesota hockey. I had no idea. And so I worked for this company for 4 years. We literally did train the top-end high school hockey players from each of the towns. And, you know, Minnesota hockey does it right. Most places the kids don't even pay to play hockey. And then some, like if they pay anything, it's, you know, $500 or whatever. My parents had to take a second mortgage out on their house so I could play AAA that last year, you know, when I was 17. So anyways, I got to learn the lay of the land, cake eater land. I got to learn where these parts were, what the powerhouse houses were, the Iron Range, this and that. And so I got to learn all of Minnesota high school hockey for 4 years. Well, I watched this company go from, you know, a $500,000 company to like a $2.5 million company in 4 years while I was there. I was like, wow, this is a business. I'm going to take it. I'm going to move to Michigan. I'm going to start my own in my hometown. Here we go. And so I up and left, took my 401k, cashed all that out, started a training facility, did it all back in Flint. And, you know, when I was doing all this, my former coach had owned the Flint Junior Generals. So I had always skated with the Junior Generals before I went to play in Huntsville or a lot of places. Like when I was back home working for my dad, I practiced with them to get my, you know, they start in August. Or we start in August, I should say. So for me to start skating August and September and half of October and then report down to Huntsville, it was what I did every year. It was just kind of my natural thing. In my summers, I didn't touch my skates until the junior team started. Then I'd skate with them every day. I'd usually leave the coach with a couple of cases of beer, and I'd leave. I'd help him run practices, but I'd do all the drills, this and that. Well, my old coach who owned the Junior Generals came walking into the facility one day because we were at the same rink, and he says, hey, you ready to get back? And I go, get back to what? He was like, I just lost my coach in the North American Hockey League. He's going down to Corpus Christi to be an assistant. And I go, oh, like you want me to coach? He said, yeah, the team's already been picked. Like, you know, all you got to do is show up and coach. And once again, like, I didn't coach before. Yeah, I didn't coach before. I was just like, all right. I was running a training facility, so I could do that. So, you know, I hadn't been competitive really in the last 4 or 5 years. So I hadn't done anything like that or got those juices going since I was done playing. And man, it was like first game, I'm yelling at the ref, I'm screaming at the other coach. I'm just like, this is awesome. So, you know, but I was a player. Once again, go back to John Gibson, Jerome Bichard, all these players, coaches, like guys that you just wanted to run through the wall for. I was like, this is how I got to coach. Well, nothing against those guys. It's just they weren't really X and O guys. And so, they didn't have to like show a kid how to catch a pass on his backhand, which is what we were doing. How to take a one-on-one rush or how to close on a guy in the corner and tie him up. So all that stuff we already knew in pro hockey. I had to get back to. I hadn't had anybody show me that stuff in years, so I really didn't even know what I was showing or how I was coaching or what my style was. I just did a really good job of recruiting. That team was pretty good that year, but the next year I think I only lost 3 or 4 games all season. I had brought over, and what coach of the year, I brought over half the kids were Minnesota kids. So I had convinced their parents to let them come live in Flint, Michigan, which was back then probably one of the top 3 murder capitals of the world per capita. And they're leaving their kids. The Minnesota nice parents are leaving their kids with me in Flint, Michigan. And so, we had a great team. We got to go to nationals that year. And then, at the time, Joe Pavelski's little brother played in Waterloo. Well, Joe played in Waterloo, and so did Scott Pavelski. Scotty Pavelski was the assistant in Waterloo, and he had just taken a regular job up in northern Minnesota, and he was getting out of it. He had his degree in finance, and that job opened up. I was scouting for them in Flint at the time, so I'd go down to Detroit, and their GM would call me and tell me to go watch a couple of guys play. I would go down there and do a report or whatever. They called me and said, "Hey, man, you want to come in and be the assistant coach here?" And it's like, okay, sounds great. And I ended up going there, and the rest was history. Now I'm here.
So speaking of here, you've been with the Austin Bruins here for the past 8 seasons here. So things must be going well.
Yeah, they're going really well. You just kind of find your niche. My wife loves it here. We both love it here. We've been here for a while now. Kind of know the lay of the land. It's a great little town. It's a town of 26,000 people. We have a Fortune 500 company here, Hormel International. So literally our warm-up jerseys are Spam jerseys, and we write Spam Town on the side, the sleeves. Yeah. So Spam, this is where Spam's made. But I mean, Hormel is such a big company. From planners to the black label bacon to it's huge. There's so many things that people don't know that Hormel does. That's why they're a Fortune 500 company. So that's right here in town, but we're the only thing during the winter to do. There isn't even a movie theater here anymore. Got closed during COVID. So we have for entertainment, for myself, my wife, we have the golf course, which is a great golf course. We have a nice country club here. And, the weekends are spent at the rink, Fridays and Saturdays watching the Austin Bruins. So it's a good little town. We got an arena that was built, I want to say, give or take a year, right around 1970. They used to have a USHL team here, and, it seats about 2,000 people. It's just got stands kind of that go up about 10 to 12 rows on both sides of the arena, and the fans pack it in here. I mean, if you get 700 to 800 fans in here, it looks packed. We average over 1,000. We average probably 1,200, and both sides are pretty packed. And we'll sell out for a few games every year, and it's been a blast. And we're just far enough away from like the Twin Cities, and even Rochester, Minnesota, which is about 45 minutes away. Twin Cities about an hour and a half. That everybody kind of stays close here, and on Fridays and Saturdays they come to our games. So it's been fun.
So you're not only the head coach, but you're the GM as well.
Yeah, I do. I wear 2 hats here. Kind of oversee that, and then we also have a Tier 3 team, an NA3HL team, which you guys had an NA3 team back in the day. They're in Huntsville, but we have the Rochester Grizzlies. So I kind of oversee the staff, the hockey ops side of everything, and just manage all that. So.
Well, Steve, this has been a fun conversation. I mean, I like guests like you that just take it and go with it. And I don't have to do a whole lot of talking. I mean, folks would rather hear from you anyway. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that, but I've been telling this story for a while now. That's the nice thing about being still involved with hockey, at some capacity. And now that, I'm doing it for a career as a coach, it's been a wild ride, but that's how I got here. And it's not probably the ideal ride or what most hockey coaches go through, but just one more thing before we get off. I don't know if you remember Derek Reynolds, but Derek Reynolds his son just played for me this past year. Ryder is old.
Okay.
I shouldn't say his oldest, but Derek and I played together in Huntsville, and he'd won a couple championships there. He played back in the day before that last year of the Channel Cats. But Derek had a son. He was up here every weekend, so now Derek's doing a little bird dogging for us. He's scouting for us. But Ryder, we'll see. He's going to be playing in Omaha. That's where Derek lives now. And if not, we'll have Ryder back here. But just thought I'd throw another name at you from Huntsville.
Yeah. All right. So we always post a call for questions on social media before the interviews that we do. And Luke Phillips jumped in with a comment on yours. And he was wanting us to ask you if you eat the garnishes they put on your plate at Macaroni Grill.
Yeah, so the story goes, it was Jason DeGarry and myself and Luke. Pre-game meal, we go to Macaroni Grill. And I was telling him how I love Macaroni Grill. And they had this signature dish that it was like pasta with chicken and shrimp, and like they'd put some form of cheese and they'd bake it, and the cheese would melt on the top as a layer. And so on that dish, they always put this garnish. I think it was rosemary, or I don't know what you know what I mean? Like looks like a pine needle.
Yeah,
or pine needles. You throw one of those things on, and it comes out, and all three of us ordered the same thing. And I looked at Doogie and I told him that, my dad used to tell me they put that on there so your food don't fly away when I was a little kid. And Doogie had something that his parents said. And in the middle of saying it to me or telling me, and we're sitting at the bar, like three guys abreast, right?
Yeah.
And Doogie's in the middle. So I'm over to his right. He's in the middle of telling me what his parents would tell him. And he stops mid-sentence, turns around and looks at Philly and says, "Don't eat the garnish. It's not there. It's not edible. It's not food." And then he turns back around and starts telling me the story of what his parents would tell him when he was a kid. And then all we hear is Philly on the other side coughing and hacking. He's doing one of those. His face is red. He's choking. So he immediately turns around and he says, "Philly, what are you doing?" He takes a drink of water. He finally goes, "I thought you guys were messing with me. I thought that was the best part, so I wanted to eat it right away before you took it." I just started laughing right away. I went, "What? What would make you think?" He's like, "I've never been to a restaurant like this before," because he lives way up in northern British Columbia or whatever. Yeah. And he'd never been to a restaurant that puts garnishes on there. So anyways, that happened, and we were in tears laughing the rest of the dinner. And from that point on, I don't think he ever ate the garnishes on a plate.
Well, that didn't hurt him. So
no. So he probably really, really remembers that. But that was one of our better nights out. That was a great time with him. Yeah.
Okay.
That's, country boy out in the big city, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there was some funny stories people told on him too in their episodes.
Oh, he's got a ton of them. Yeah.
So, how many more years do you think you might be doing this?
Hopefully as long as I possibly can until they tell me I can't do it anymore. That's one nice thing about coaching. I don't think there's an age limit on coaching, but there's been other opportunities. But we talked about Mr. Jeffries in Huntsville, and you have a good owner. Grass isn't always greener on the other side. So my last boss when I was in Waterloo, P.K. O'Hanley, told me that coaching. He'd been there for, I don't know how many years. I want to say close to 20 years or something like that. I'd seen him turn down an American Hockey League coaching job. I was sitting in the office when he did it. Grass isn't always greener on the other side. You got to look at the life you're living, and are you comfortable? Do you like it where you're at? And sometimes if you try to go move up and jump up, you're out of a job pretty quick and trying to find one. And the stability that we have here has been nice, and I'm not in any hurry to leave. That's for sure. Especially when my wife's got a decent job here, we're close to everything. And once again, when you find your niche of, I can pick up the phone and call about, pretty much every college coach in the book, and there's over 60 of them. They'll take my call. That's as far as the Division I level goes. They'll take my call. It's kind of that niche that I was talking about. You want to be able to move guys on, advance guys, and if you go to another level, you got to learn it all over again. So, I don't know. That's a good question, but hopefully I'm here for a while.
What did you ever think you might like to own a team?
Sure. Yeah, I think I would. Now, I'll tell you this. We scrape and clutch and grab and claw just to break even every year. So owning a team is it's tough. You gotta do a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats and have some good people in the front office and in the hockey ops office. And, I'd like to think we kind of built that here. It's certainly not sellouts like the Havoc have been doing, which has been really cool to see, by the way. I love watching. I tuned into some of the games. I got Flow Hockey, and I tuned into some of the games, and it's pretty cool to see all the fans there. And I'm still Facebook friends with half the guys that are still down there, and I'll see, Phil Daigle or the Gers or Gibby. They'll be like, hey, we got a ice suite for the night. Who's in, and it would be really cool to come and actually watch a game again. But, as far as owning a team, I'd love to own a team because I think I kind of know how the ops work around it. But, right now I'm just going to continue to try to make this one operate as well as it has and hopefully keep breaking even or make a little bit of money.
Yeah. Well, you do have to come up with a little bit of scratch too, so.
Yeah, that's an important piece. You better have somebody to make money, right? But there's a lot of different ways to get in, and as far as ownership goes, and hopefully that's something in my future at some point.
Yeah. Well, all right. I appreciate you taking your time. This ended up being longer than what I thought it was going to be, but it's been a fun one.
Well, trim it back. I talk too much sometimes, I guess. You can trim it back.
No. That's fine. It's a good thing about a podcast. Yeah. I mean, you can go as long as you want to. So
nice. Right.
I'm not tied into, unless, something gets said that's maybe kind of out of the way, I might go back and take that out. Otherwise, I've been okay so far. So.
Yeah, that's good. No, I appreciate it, Tim. Thanks for reaching out. Yeah, anytime you need me for anything, let me know.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks a lot, Tim. We'll talk to you soon.
That was former Channel Cats and Havoc defenseman Steve Howard in the slot. Thanks to Steve for a great visit. We'll be back with more of the Reekin Havoc podcast.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Join us now for Huntsville's Greatest Hits, where current and former players recount their most memorable dropping of the gloves.
Former Havoc center Justin Rohr.
I ended up getting hit from behind in Huntsville my last year, and we got up and had a little I think there was a little 3 or 4 of us. Well, maybe it was a full line brawl or not, but there was 3 or 4 of us guys all jumped in, but I ended up smashing my nose and had to play with a left crooked nose for the rest of the season, and then ended up getting it fixed. Had to go under the knife at the end of the year and have a nose job. So, yeah, that was one that does stand out. There's another college one that stands out. That was our last year. And, of course, you don't fight in college. You're wearing cages in NCAA. And had a goalie slash me. We had a big rivalry against these guys. There was actually a guy I played with in junior in Laurens. So I gave the goalie a little slash back, and he went down and flopped pretty good. And so then they had 2 guys jump me, and we all got our helmets off, and we were going at it, and ended up starting a pretty good line brawl on that one in college. So needless to say, we all got suspended for 3 games on that one.
We'll be back with the Reekin Havoc podcast.
In June of 2005, our twin girls were delivered, Melissa and Catherine, and they were born 14 weeks early.
Amy and Chris George talk about the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund.
They both weighed less than 2 pounds, and Catherine was 115 and Melissa was 1'9". Melissa lived for a couple of hours, but all of the medical technology in the world just could not have saved her, and she passed away while she was in the NICU. Chris realized pretty early that God had given us a platform that we could use to try to help people. So Chris and I started the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund at Huntsville Hospital.
To know that Melissa's name is living on, her legacy continues, and I think that was very important to Amy and I, is why the fund is named after her. Because for 7 weeks, Melissa fought so that Aunt Catherine would have a chance to live. And I think that we wouldn't be doing her name any justice if we didn't carry on, because we know we wanted to honor her and honor her legacy. And the community, Huntsville Havoc, the community in Huntsville itself, they've rallied around that. And it's been a wonderful support system for us. And I think for a lot of families too, when they see total strangers that are giving.
We're online at HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org. Click on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund and you can give that way.
There's no donation that's too small, and every dollar is just as important as the next one. And if you're giving, then we understand you're giving because you care. And that's what's important, is that we've learned over the years that people give because they care.
And you can volunteer. If you're interested in that, you can click on the volunteer tab to fill out an application. We are grateful for any type of support because we know that once we pull those dollars together, we can do big things.
For more information on the Melissa George Neonatal Memorial Fund, visit HuntsvilleHospitalFoundation.org.
This is Kevin Weaver Vicali, and you're listening to the Reekin Havoc podcast.
The Havoc Booster Club will be doing a fundraiser at Slim Chickens on South Parkway June 7th from noon till 4 p.m. Stop by for lunch, mention the Booster Club, and a portion of the sales will go to the Booster Club. The 29 home dates for the Havoc have been announced, beginning from opening night on Friday, October 24th through Saturday, March 28th. There will be 11 Friday games, 10 on Saturday, 5 on Sunday, 2 on Thursday, and 1 on Tuesday. You can see all the dates at HuntsvilleHavoc.com. The Huntsville Havoc On Ice Youth Summer Camp is back. Session 1 is June 16th through 19th. Session 2 is July 21st through 24th. Kids can learn from head coach Stu Steffen and assistant coach Tyler Piacentini. Cost is $350 for skaters and $300 for goalies for the 4 days. For more information, go to huntsvilleHavoc.com/youth-camp. The Havoc Free Agent Showcase for all junior, college, and aspiring pro players will be held this year at the St. Peter's Recplex in a partnership with the Missouri State Ice Bears, August 1st through 3rd. Coaches Stu Steffen and Tyler Piacentini will be in attendance and inviting one player to the Havoc training camp. For more information, you can email ssteffen@huntsvillehavoc.com. Summer hours for the front office and team store are 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
Do you have a question or a suggestion for a potential upcoming guest on the Reekin Havoc podcast? Send an email to reekinhavoc@outlook.com. That's REEKIN havoc@outlook.com. Leave us a text or voicemail at 256-434-RKKN. That's 256-434-7556. Or send us a message via Facebook or Instagram.
The Reekin Havoc podcast.
For those returning from military service, the transition back to civilian life isn't always easy. Retired Marine Gunnery Sergeant Bill Cook talks about still serving veterans.
The mission of still serving veterans is to serve and honor veterans and their families by empowering them to build meaningful lives. And we do that through connecting to fulfilling careers, getting the benefits they deserve, or the services that they need. We have never charged anybody anything for our services. A group of business leaders in town felt there was a need to help the seriously wounded make that transition back into civilian life. Employment services, VA benefits, and connections to other community services. That's what we do. If you're a veteran and you need help, please get a hold of us. Go to that website, ssv.org, and you can find out pretty much anything you need to know about still serving veterans.
In Huntsville, call 256-883-7035. tickets, official Huntsville Havoc merchandise, and more, go to huntsvillehavoc.com. Visit our website at reekinhavoc.com. Look for us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Threads. And listen, follow, and subscribe to the Reekin Havoc podcast on your favorite platform to keep up with the only weekly podcast covering the Huntsville Havoc, the Reekin Havoc podcast.